Hey everybody, so today we're going to be learning our last lesson in Chapter 2. Chapter 2, Lesson 8, Solve Percent Problems. Before we start though, learning how to solve some of these problems and learning new strategies, we're going to learn an important vocabulary term. Okay, that term is proportion. Okay, so proportion. That's how you pronounce it. And proportion means an equation that shows two ratios are equivalent. Okay, so proportion is an equation that shows two ratios are equivalent. So a good example of this would be from our Chapter 1 test. We had a problem on there that talked about how many jumps per second someone makes. Okay, so this was a problem from our Chapter 1 test, and the person made 36 jumps in 9 seconds. Okay, and they were asking us to figure out how many jumps did they make in 27 seconds. Some of you may remember this problem, but our strategy for the problem was to use these arrows. Okay, so using these arrows, we had to figure out how to go from 9 to 27, which you multiplied by 3. So 9 times 3 is 27. Do the same to the top. 36 times 3 is 108. And equal. Okay, so this is an example of a proportion because we have two equivalent ratios and they're equal to each other. Okay, and multiplying it by the same number lets us know that they are equivalent. This ratio is equivalent to this ratio. And we're just going to do some highlighting. Okay, so this equal sign is really important for saying that they are a proportion. Okay, an equation that shows two ratios are equivalent. Here we have our two ratios. They are equivalent. Okay, they're equal to each other, and we're using the same number to multiply the first ratio by. Alright, so to get to solving some of our percent problems today, we're going to start off with this problem. 10 is 25% of what number? So 10 is 25% of what number? We're not used to seeing problems like this in Lesson 7. We're used to seeing problems like, what is 30% of 200? But here, we are given this. 10 is 25% of what number? So when it says of what number, that's the total, okay? They're only giving us part of the total here, but we need to figure out what the total number is. And to solve this problem, our first strategy is going to be to use double number lines. Okay, so first we're just going to make our first number line. And of course we're going to make our second number line. Okay, now my top number line is going to be based off of percents. Okay, and I'm going to start it at 0%, and it's going to go all the way to 100%. All right, and the bottom number line is going to be based on my number. Okay, so we have a number here. We want to know what the total number is. So the bottom one is going to be numbers. And of course we're going to start with 0. But we don't know what we're ending with. That's what we want to find. We want to find our total. Okay, so I know that we are using 25% in this problem. And on my number line, I want to make sure I'm able to find 25%. So you have to determine what to count by. You could count by tens, okay? So count from 0 to 100 by tens. That would allow you, if you were looking at it, if this was 10 and 20, you would know that, if this is 20 and 30, you would know 25% is right in the middle over there. You could also count by 25s, okay? So I'm just going to count by 25s because 25% is what I'm trying to find. 10 is 25% of what number? So this is something I want to see on here. So I'm just going to count by 25s. Right in the middle, I'm going to put 50%, 25%, 75%. Okay, it's just like when you have quarters, you're counting to $1, 25, 50, 75, $1. So now I need to make the same marks, whatever marks I have over here, I'm going to make them down here on the second number line. So over here I see one line, so I'm going to make a line here, see a line there, make one there, and one there, here. Okay? So I have the same amount of marks. Now I know that 25% of whatever my total is 10. That's what the problem tells me. So I'm going to put a 10 right here. I'm going to highlight that because that's something important. That's what the problem gave us. Okay? Again, the problem told us that 10 is 25% of the total. So now that we know this first number, we also know what we're counting by on this number line. When we went from 0 to 10, we know that we added 10 to get here. So to go from 10 to this mark, we know we're going to add another 10. Okay, so this is going to be 20. And then we're going to add another 10, 30, and another 10, 40. So we found that our total is 40, okay? From knowing what 25% of the total was, being 10, we were able to find the total, okay? So our answer for this problem is 40. All right, so we are going to learn one more problem and one more strategy on how to solve this type of problem. So, Peyton spent 60% of her money to buy a TV. If the TV cost $300, how much money did she have? Again, we're asking for a total. We want to know how much total money she had. I'm going to just bring this closer so you can see the question a little clearer. Okay. So our strategy for this is going to be using a percent proportion. So just like we did up here in our example, that's really similar to what we're going to do for this strategy. So use a percent proportion. And when we're using a percent proportion, like in many problems, we have a part and we have a whole. Okay, so we know that the cost of the TV, which is $300, is the part, and we want to find the total. Okay, so that's going to be the whole. Alright, so again, my part from the problem, let's just read it again. Paid and spent 60% of her money to buy a TV. If the TV cost $300, how much money did she have total? So we know that the TV cost $300, but that wasn't all of her money. She didn't spend all of her money on that TV. She only spent 60% of her money. So we're going to say part, it's going to be $300. Alright, so we're going to set up two ratios. Remember from our problem up there that we need two equivalent ratios. So this is going to be our first ratio. It's going to be on money. Okay, and we're using a percent proportion. So that means our other ratio is going to be on percent. Alright, so now what we want to find is the whole, but that's something we don't know yet. So we're going to make our next one. And our next ratio is going to be based off of this 60%. So we need to turn the 60% into a ratio. And we know that 60%, if we turned it into a fraction, is the same as 60 out of 100. Okay, so we have two ratios. One of them's not done. We need to figure out what this is. Okay, so we could go to figure out what this is. We could go from 300 to 60 to find out how we go from this big number to this small number. We'd need to divide, or we could go in the opposite direction and find out how we go from 60 to 300, which I think we should do it. It'll be easier. And they should be equal. So we're going to use the same number on the top as we do on the bottom. So 60 times 300, a shortcut to figure out what number that is that gets multiplied is just by covering up one of the zeros. So if you cover up a 0, just ask yourself how many times does 6 go into 30. Okay, that's going to be times 5. 60 times 5 equals 300. I'm going to do the same on the bottom. 100 times 5 gives me 500. Okay, so we found our answer. So how much money did she have total? Well, she had $500 total, and she only used 60% of her money to buy the TV. 60% bell ring. 60% of her money is going to be $300. So just going to highlight this real quick. Again, this is a proportion, okay? We're using a percent proportion. We're doing the same thing that we did at the first problem. We use the same two numbers, the same number on the top and bottom to multiply this ratio by to get this. Okay, that's telling us that they're equal and that they are proportional. So Peyton had $500 total. All right, so in your homework, if you are asked a question and you want to use the double number line strategy, most likely they are going to be providing these lines for you, okay, and you just have to fill out the number lines yourself. And then you can always use this strategy, use a percent proportion strategy. It should look something like this. Let me know if you have any questions.